Hey, RoboCoach fans, this is Dr. RoboCoach with my first 2024 cheat sheet update. I'm going to show you a typical fantasy football draft for 10-team league with typical PPR scoring setup. And let's get right into it. I've brought it up in front of you here. You can see this is RoboCoach's prediction, and we're on running backs, and the things you want to focus on are the tiers. So this black line indicates the end of a tier. Everybody above this is in tier 1. Everybody below it is tier 2, and so on. So you can look at these ratings and you can quibble about them, but we'll talk about that some other day. What you should focus on for this one is how many players are in the tier and what's the tier drop. So I see 5 players in the tier, and the tier drop is basically 380 to 330, so about 50 points. So that's a pretty big tier drop, 50 points divided by 16. So you're looking at about 3 points per week if you can get somebody in the first tier versus somebody in the second tier. So let's look at wide receiver. All right, so now we've got 6 players in the top tier, and the tier drop is 380 to 330. So it's about the same for wide receivers and for running backs. So one thing I do remember was the running backs had a different delta. It wasn't this green. Let's take a quick look at running backs. There was some green here, but then there's McCaffrey. Okay, so in general, you can get wide receivers and running backs with your later picks because that delta is green, and green deltas mean that these players are underrated. So can't really tell off the bat if wide receivers or running backs are going to be my first pick because the tier drop is about the same and the number of players in the top tier are about the same. Tight ends, defenses, and kickers, I already took a look at them, and I'll just show you that tight ends are about, there's 3 players in the top tier, but the tier drop is next to nothing. It goes from 330 down to about 310. So it's only a 20-point tier drop. So these are tight tiers. I can get somebody in the third tier who's almost as good as somebody in the first tier and not give up many points per week. Defenses and kickers I already looked at. They're about the same way. Let's take a look at QBs. Okay, that's interesting. We've got a tier of 1. Jalen Hurts is going to be a difference maker this year. The tier drop goes from 380 down to 330. So it's a 50-point tier, but there's only one person in that tier. If I miss Jalen Hurts, then I'm dropping way down here. I won't be able to get anybody else in the top tier. So I think that pretty much makes the decision for me right there. I'm going to have to target Jalen Hurts with my first pick. Interesting. Okay. So that's how you do it. You figure out your first pick, and then that's going to determine a lot with what happens with your next picks. So you can, figure that out yourself here now and go in and say, okay, well, with my second pick, oh, look, there's AJ Brown. I might want to get a stack. Or if I can get Tyreek Hill, then I go after him. If I have the 10th pick in the draft, then I might be able to get Tyreek with the 11th pick because his ADP is 11. So, and then maybe I'll get lucky and I'll get AJ Brown with my 3rd pick. And then I'll have 2 players in the top tier. So you can do all that sort of math in your head, or you can just go to Robo Draft and then Robo does it all for you. I started up a draft here, and that's pretty much what it told me to do. So it's telling me to get Jalen Hurts with my first pick, Tyreek with my second pick. It told me to grab Mike Evans here with my 3rd pick. I think it was probably thinking that I couldn't get Brown with my 3rd pick, which may be the case. But since it's a 10-team league, Robo might be off here, and he might be available right there. So I might be able to grab him. So if I would definitely nuke Evans here and take Brown and get those two players who are in the top tier and a stack with Jalen. So that would be great. And then, as you saw, there was a lot of underrated running backs later on in the draft. I can grab them. You see these other ones, they've got the asterisks by them, and that means that you can skip those players if you want. It's described down here. It's just an optional pick. It's an open pick. So Debo's not going to be on your starting team. So this really doesn't contribute to your bottom line because you can only, in this league, you can only start 2 players. But Robo thinks, there's not really any reason to go after tight ends or running backs here because, hey, you can get them later. So it just goes after value, and it saw some value here. You could grab a upside player, whatever. Whenever you see that asterisk, it's up to you. So anyway, you're going to get your running backs a little bit later. And if you think it's a reach for Raheem or you think it's a reach for Zach, you can always nuke them and rerun the draft. I personally like those 2 picks. Raheem was one of the best running backs last year. Zach's coming on to a new team behind Joe Burrow. He's going to do better with the Bengals. So I like that pick. And then later on, you can grab tight ends, as we discussed. There are lots of tight ends you can grab. You don't have to worry about getting them early. So that's it. Your cheat sheet and draft all in about 1 minute. No, 6 minutes, but hey, who's counting? In any event, this has been Dr. RoboCoach. Good luck with your draft this year. And remember to visit FantasyFootballDraft.com to get all your draft advice. Thank you.